The power of the unseen, positioning, silence, and the anatomy of true authority. 1. Truths that arrive slowly. Some ideas don't change you immediately. The first time you encounter them, you turn the page, scroll past, maybe pause for a moment, but your life stays exactly where it was. The brain is reluctant to process what it doesn't perceive as a threat. Every thought that doesn't force change is kept waiting at the edge of our neural pathways, stored away for some future use. But some ideas are different. They don't shake you right away either. The difference is this: they begin to seep in slowly. A year later, 2 years later, on an unexpected night, you suddenly hear a click inside you, and you can't even tell when that click happened. I first noticed that click in the middle of my own defeats. For years, I lived believing that honesty functioned as a shield, that good intentions would be recognized on their own, that loyalty was reciprocal, that transparency nourished trust. These beliefs weren't wrong, perhaps, but they were incomplete, and incomplete maps cannot lead you to the right places. Life doesn't reward your delusions. It doesn't show patience either. It simply tests you and forces you to face the results. I faced them, and in the middle of that confrontation I began to see something I had spent years avoiding. The world operates not on intentions, but on positions. 2. Misreading Machiavelli. Niccolò Machiavelli is one of the most misunderstood thinkers in history. The word Machiavellian is used today almost as an insult. People see him as the representative of cold cynicism and immoral calculation. Yet, when you actually read Machiavelli, you encounter something different. A master of realism. A brutal anatomy of human nature, written in the sharp language of an observer. He does not tell people how they should be. He tells them how people are. And the distance between those two things, the gap between how we should be and how we are, is like a crack that silently opens in most people's lives. Into that crack, you drop your expectations, your trust, everything you are unprepared for. What Machiavelli tells you is this: ignoring that crack does not close it. It only means you'll be more surprised when you fall into it. Accepting this is not immorality. On the contrary, it is the first step toward being a truly responsible and conscious human being. Because only when you see reality can you choose to engage with it ethically. 3. The silent language of positioning. People treat you not according to who you are, but according to how you appear. That sentence stings on first hearing. It even invites moral objection. But I'm genuine. I care about truth. My intentions are clean, you think. Yes, and that is entirely irrelevant, at least in the first few interactions. People read signals. Not words, signals. Not behavior, patterns. Not expressions, consistency. You constantly say yes. They position you as an unlimited resource. You explain everything. They code you as a predictable entity. You're always available. They perceive you as a cheap option. None of this is done deliberately. The brain automatically generates categories from the signals it receives, and those categories determine how people will treat you. Positioning is rarely a conscious process, but its consequences are conscious and real. It is your behavior that places you in a position, and changing that position happens not by narrating yourself differently, but by behaving differently. This does not suggest shaping your identity through deception. On the contrary, it suggests making who you are consistent with how you behave. Because Even the most honest person, if sending the wrong signals through their behavior, will encounter the wrong behavior in return. 4. The paradox of explanation. In the modern world, transparency is celebrated as a virtue. Explain everything. Share every decision. Say why you think what you think. Express your emotions. Trust in the power of vulnerability. And all of this, depending on context, can be true. But it misses something. Over-explanation drains power. Someone who explains everything is read like an open book. How they will react is known. What they value is clear. Where they will break is predictable. And predictability is a strategic disadvantage. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Power is built not through constant communication, but through controlled silence. Silence is not a loss, it is a tool. When you go silent, the person across from you tries to fill the void. The human mind cannot tolerate ambiguity. It immediately begins to interpret, fill, produce meaning. And most of the time, it imagines something far larger than what actually exists. This is why the unknown is powerful. What is known is manageable. What is unknown must be reckoned with. When you say everything, people put you in a category and operate from there. When you stay silent or speak selectively, the category remains unclear, and ambiguity keeps attention alive. 5. The psychology of distance. We assume that closeness creates value. Always being there, being accessible, responding quickly. We think these things make us important. But psychology says the opposite. The perception of scarcity creates value. This is not an emotional judgment, it is a fundamental truth about how the brain works. Everything that is always available, water, air, sunlight, is rarely felt as precious. Everything that requires effort to reach, a rare encounter, hard-won approval, an unexpected reply, carries weight and meaning. When you are constantly accessible, people take you as data. They use you as a resource, but they rarely think about you. When you create distance, when you are selective, when you don't come running to every call, when you don't try to fill every silence, people begin to think about you. They notice your absence. They pay attention when you arrive. This is not a game, it is a signal. Being there for everyone always usually originates from an internal need, the need to be liked, the fear of rejection, the anxiety of feeling worthless. And these needs are readable from the outside, not as weakness, but as an invitation that says, you can test me, I won't hold my boundaries. Distance, on the other hand, says, I choose, and that choice defines my value. 6. Boundaries, not moral, but structural. Most people think of boundaries as a moral concept. I set limits to be a good person, or I set limits because I respect myself. These are true, but incomplete. Boundaries are also structural tools, like the foundation of a building. Without them, no matter how beautiful the materials you use, the structure collapses. Boundless kindness stops being kindness. What you permit once becomes expectation. What becomes expectation is demanded as a right. And once demanded as a right, what is taken from you is no longer seen as given. You are only seen as a broken promise. People don't do this consciously. The system works this way. The brain calibrates its behavior based on the responses it receives. If a child gets candy every time they cry, they learn to cry to get candy. This is not a moral decision. It is psychological adaptation. You are inside that same process. When you don't set limits, you unconsciously program people to want more. And one day, exhausted, hurt, feeling used, you ask, "Why did this happen?" The answer is always the same, because you never taught them otherwise. 7. The illusion of trust and loyalty. One of the most dangerous illusions is this: loyalty emerges when you treat people well. I treated them well. They will treat me well in return. This sentence is an emotional inference from brain chemistry, an instinctive expectation of social justice, and in real life, it frequently leads to illusion. People act according to circumstances. This is not a moral judgment. It is an observational truth. Under low-pressure conditions, most people appear loyal, honest, and consistent. Under high pressure, threat, conflict of interest, career risk, economic anxiety, that appearance changes rapidly. One of Machiavelli's most striking observations is this: people remain loyal not to you, but to circumstances. This does not make him nihilistic. It makes him an observer. And the practical conclusion drawn from this observation is, when choosing people who deserve your trust, look not at how they define you, but at how they behave under pressure. Because character's true face is revealed not in ease, but in difficulty. Someone who understands this expects loyalty less blindly, trusts more selectively, and disappointments become less shattering because they are no longer surprises. 8. The power of non-reaction. There was a time when I responded immediately to every criticism, every attack, every provocation. This reflex came from somewhere genuine. I wanted to explain myself, to defend myself, to be understood. Staying silent when I'd been wronged felt like accepting the injustice. But over the years I learned, reacting is, more often than not, a loss. Every time you react, you tell the other person something. This is affecting me. And that information, consciously or not, shapes the next behavior. Reaction is the signal of lost control. Non-reaction is the quiet expression of control. This does not mean erasing your emotions. Recognizing what is happening inside you, while being selective about what you express outwardly, is an entirely different skill. Managing your reaction is not suppression. It is choosing the timing, choosing the channel, or choosing not to respond at all. Machiavelli's principle, which we might call controlled ambiguity, comes into play precisely here. When people don't know how you'll react, but sense that there is a line, they move more carefully. Because ambiguity forces calculation, and someone who calculates doesn't act impulsively. 9. Words pass, actions remain. I care about you deeply. That is a word. But being there, without saying it, without expectation, consistently, that is an action. People love to hear words, but they read behavior, and these two data channels frequently contradict each other. Someone who wants to deceive you uses words, because they are cheap, easy to produce, quick to change. Actions, on the other hand, are costly. They take time to repeat. They form a pattern, and patterns define identity. Build your identity not in statements, but in your behavior. When you act consistently, your identity settles. When your identity settles, your position forms. When your position forms, you no longer need to defend it. Because at that point, people define you not by what you might do, but by what you do. And that definition places you on a ground that neither threat nor flattery can shake, because it doesn't depend on information coming from outside. It rests on consistency coming from within. 10. What power is and what it isn't. The greatest illusion about power is equating it with noise. The one who speaks loudest, the one who takes up the most space, the one who puts themselves forward most frequently. These are the appearances of power, not power itself. True power is usually silent. Not the one who walks into a room and says everything, but the one who speaks little and is listened to. Not the one who explains every decision, but the one who makes a decision and stands in place. Not the one who seeks approval, but the one who chooses to approve. When I first noticed this difference, I was struck. The people who have influenced me most in life were not the loudest. They were the most consistent. Their words and actions aligned. They didn't shift their position under pressure. Power is the capacity to move others. But you achieve that movement not through brute force, but through positioning. Positioning is this: consistently demonstrating where you stand, what values shape you, and which limits are non-negotiable. When this is established, truly established, people begin to position themselves around you. They calibrate their reactions, they adjust their behavior, they take you as a fixed point of reference. And a fixed point of reference influences without moving much. 11. Being tested. Not a threat, but information. People test you. Always. In every relationship. In every environment. This is rarely a deliberate act of sabotage. It is a social calibration process. In any new relationship, the brain continuously asks, who is this person? How do they behave? How trustworthy are they? Where do they break? And, to answer those questions, it tests you. Small delays, pushing limits with minor requests, an unexpected criticism, a subtle disrespect, like dropping a stone in water and watching how large the ripple grows. Most people either don't see these tests or overreact to them. Neither works. Not seeing teaches them that they can cross your boundaries. Overreacting puts your emotional instability on display and provides new information. This person is easy to provoke. The right response is this: see the test, but respond calmly and clearly. Calmly, because it shows you haven't panicked. Clearly, because it says where your limit is. And the combination of these two, calm and clarity, is the most powerful response. Because it teaches, this person saw it, this person knows, and this person was not rattled. Once that message is established, the frequency of testing decreases, because the response becomes predictable. But this doesn't make you controllable. On the contrary, it makes you reliable. And reliability, in the long run, is more lasting than power. 12. Transformation. Not harshness, but clarity. I need to stop here and say something plainly. Everything I've described is not meant to make you cold, calculating, or distrustful. Quite the opposite. These principles made me more transparent, but selective. More connected, but consciously so. Stronger, not unbreakable, but knowing where I am breakable. What Machiavelli teaches is not to flee from people. It is to see people more realistically. And when you see them realistically, you can build real connections. Disappointment decreases because your expectations are grounded in reality. The surprise of betrayal decreases because you see who people are sooner. Exhaustion decreases because you stop trying to give everything to everyone. What remains? Chosen, deepened, mutually respectful relationships. And that is far more valuable than blind kindness. 13. Perception shapes reality. Finally, perhaps the most unsettling truth: who you actually are matters less than how others perceive you. When you read that sentence, a voice inside you objects. But that's not fair. You're right. It isn't fair. But it is real. Perception shapes behavior. Behavior produces outcomes, and outcomes make a life. Someone who understands this no longer asks, "Why don't they understand me?" They ask, "What kind of signals am I sending?" And that question carries extraordinary responsibility, because you have control over your signals and over the intentions inside you. But if you only carry your intentions and neglect the signals, your intentions remain suspended in air, unperceived, uncounted. This is why positioning matters, not just strategically, but ethically too. Because if you want the things you truly value to live, it is not enough just to feel them. You must carry them outward, consistently, clearly, and consciously. Chapter 14. Conclusion. Standing still. A tree doesn't prove in every storm that it must sway. It endures through its roots. True power doesn't try to prove itself. It doesn't fight to defend itself. It doesn't answer every criticism, doesn't react to every provocation. It stands still, and everything shapes itself around it. This is not passivity. Passivity is drifting. This is positioning, taking root, making who you are, what you value, and where your limits lie, consistent through your behavior, not your words. Building this takes time, but once built, it becomes difficult to shake, because it doesn't rest on reactions coming from outside, it rests on consistency coming from within. And what comes from within cannot be controlled, it can only be lived.